I'd like to call the meeting of the Pennsylvania Game Commission to order. This is Tuesday, September 22nd. Please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll?
President Hoover.
Here.
Vice President Layton.
Present.
Secretary Daly's here. Commissioner Putnam. Present. Commissioner Schlemmer.
Present.
Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Mittrick. He's missing. Commissioner Knick.
Present.
All right, Commissioner Mittrick had prior arrangements before being sworn in as a commissioner, so he is excused for today. I'd like to introduce everyone to the new commissioner, Commissioner Knick from the Northeast region. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the commission meeting held June 26, 2017.
So moved.
Put your
Second.
mics in. What? Mine's on.
Mine's on.
Everybody else is on? Who was the first on it?
Schlemmer.
Simon?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Any corrections? All right, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no.
Motion
Passes.
The first item coming before the commission today appears on page 2 of your agenda. It's from the Bureau of Wildlife Protection and concerns proposed rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code, Section 147.102. Each year, the commission facilitates the examination of persons seeking a falconry permit. Historically, this testing process has only been available from January 1st through June 30th each year. In an effort to provide greater opportunity for falconry applicants, the commission is proposing to amend Section 147.102 relating to application, examination, and fees to expand the examination period to year-round testing and to require advanced scheduling of examinations. The text is shown on page 2 of your agenda.
Okay, we have a proposed rulemaking to amend PA Code 58, Code 147.102. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? I do have one. During the period this year, apparently, we received more permits than we did applicants for the falconry permit. Is that correct?
It's my understanding that we had 6 of those peregrine falcon permits allotted, and we had 5 applicants at this
And
point
we
in
have 5
time.
applicants.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that would prohibit us from extending the application period to allow members that previously didn't apply or couldn't apply to apply?
We've already done that.
You have done.
It's been
Okay,
it's been extended.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries.
The next item appears on page 3 of your agenda. It concerns adopted rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code Sections 141.1, 141.22, and 141.43 and 141.67 to extend the use of air guns and semi-automatic rifles for small game and fur bearers to special regulation areas. Delete the limiting term centerfire from the manually operated or semi-automatic rifle authorization that was erroneously added in a previous amendment, and relocate and extend the use of air guns and semi-automatic rimfire rifles 22 caliber or less for dispatching legally trapped fur bears caught in a trap during the regular or special firearms deer seasons. The text of this is shown on pages 4 through 6 of your agenda, and I understand that there is a floor amendment to page 5 that will require a motion and second and a vote after the main motion has been made and seconded.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Want to make the,
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd like to make an amendment to this motion and add under section 141.22, under A1, which reads a manually operated or semi-automatic rimfire rifle or manually operated rimfire handgun. The firearm must be a .22 caliber or less that propels a single projectile ammunition.
can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and an amendment. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
I think we're voting on the original proposal first. Oh, the amendment first. All right, so this is a vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. That carries. We can vote on the whole thing.
Now we need we have a motion and a second.
We've already-
Would you call the vote?
This would be the vote on the entire proposal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no. That carries.
The next item appears on page 7 of your agenda to amend 58 PA Code Section 141.18 relating to permitted devices to authorize the use of electronic decoys used to hunt waterfowl, electronically heated scent, or lure dispensers and electronic devices that generate and distribute ozone gas for scent control purposes. The text is shown on page 8 of your agenda, and as before, I understand there is also a floor amendment requiring a motion and second after the motion and second has been made on the main proposal.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from the commissioner?
Mr. President, I'd like to make an amendment, if I could. Under section 141.18, I would like to add item 10, which would read electronic dove decoys used solely for hunting dove.
All right, we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any questions on the amendment? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, could you call the vote?
So we're voting on the amendment, correct?
Correct.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. That carries.
And now would you call the vote on the entire,
All those in favor of the entire proposal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
aye?
Opposed? Carries.
The next item before the commission appears on page 9 of your agenda. It's from the Bureau of Wildlife Habitat Management. This concerns proposed rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code Sections 135.2 and 135.48 through 135.55, and to create Chapter 147, Subchapter AA. The Commission has recently conducted an extensive review of public access to state game lands by persons with mobility challenges. This evaluation included various public meetings and requests for public comment. Based upon the results of this evaluation, the Commission is seeking improvements that will enhance public access to its state game lands by persons with mobility disabilities, while simultaneously protecting the wildlife resources and avoidance or minimization of conflicts with other lawful users of the state game land system. To reach this purpose, the Commission is proposing to amend Sections 135.2 and 135.48-135.55 and create Chapter 147, Subchapter AA, as set forth on pages 9 through 16 of your agenda. Among other things, these amendments will permit the use of wheelchairs anywhere persons may lawfully walk, define the term mobility devices, provide for the use of mobility devices and motor vehicles on suitable designated routes on state game lands, and define the parameters of acceptable use of mobility devices on state game lands to avoid or minimize damage to wildlife resources or conflicts with other lawful users of the state game land system. Again, the text is shown on pages 9 through 16 of your agenda.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would like to comment on this in that these regulations seem pretty simple, but there was an awful lot of work went into it. I don't know how far back we're going, but we've got 3 or 4 years of staff work getting to this point. And we faced a lot of criticism, and we took a lot of hits for a while in this process. But in the end, yesterday, one of our most ardent critics supported everything that we have in this proposal. So the staff really did a good job on this is a difficult issue because with the Americans with Disabilities Act, we could face some pretty serious lawsuits, and we were threatened with lawsuits. But the staff really did a good job. The lawsuits are now history, and I think we have something that everybody can live with. So very good work on your behalf, Director, and all the staff that worked on it.
Would you like to expand on some of the vehicles that we're actually working to legalize here?
Sure. So although there's no, individual definition for the specific type of vehicle, we're looking at vehicles that would provide greater access for individuals with disabilities, such as UTVs, four-wheel drive, four-wheeled types of devices is what we expect to see more of on state game lands. Right now, an individual that is a mobility disabled hunter, they'd be restricted to the use of an ATV. And I think we all know how difficult it is for someone, with some sort of a mobility disability to be able to get on an ATV and operate it. I think this is going to increase opportunities for those individuals and get them into places that they probably haven't been to for quite some time. The application process is relatively easy, and this is just going to keep those guys in the game for a much longer period of time, which is what we're all about, making sure that those people are involved in the tradition of hunting, hopefully bringing family members along with them to enjoy the sport as we all do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Carried.
The next item is also from the Bureau of Wildlife Habitat Management, this time concerning real estate. It is a donation, contract number L3714, State Game Land number 311 in Elk County. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is offering to donate 3 connected parcels of land totaling 35.32 more or less acres, located in Benezet Township, Elk County, adjoining State Game Land number 311, as shown on Exhibit Red 1 on page 18 of your agenda. Tract 1 is 9.84 more or less acres, Tract 2 is 11 more or less acres, and Tract 3 is 14.48 more or less acres, and they adjoin State Game Land number 311. Woodlots consisting of mixed northern hardwoods and conifers are located to the north and in the southeast corner of the properties. The remaining habitat is mostly grass fields interspersed with a few shrubs. Tract 2 has a house and outbuilding suitable for equipment storage. The timber on all 3 tracts is reserved until August 31st, 2018. The properties will provide prime elk viewing opportunity. Access is from Winslow Hill Road.
Do we have a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying no. Carries.
The next item is also a donation. It appears on page 19 of your agenda, contract number L3715, State Game Land number 187, Luzerne County. Benjamin J. Ostrowski is offering to donate 18.8 more or less acres of land in Dorrance Township, Luzerne County, located west of State Game Land number 187, as shown on Exhibit Red 2 on page 20 of your agenda. The property is forested with chestnut oak, scrub oak, hickory, and maple, with blueberry and huckleberry in the understory. The property is landlocked.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one. Pete, I may know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. From what I can see here, this is maybe butting up against a couple either pipelines or utility, major overhead utilities, whatever. Are there any issues associated with that? We're okay with those?
There were no issues detected. We had land management staff from the region go out there and do a land exam, a standardized form. They reviewed the site. Everything appears okay with the site. And just to let me clarify for a moment here, it's 18 acres. It is not adjoining game lands. It is not an indenture into game lands. But there is value there with the Interstate 81 corridor. This is immediately adjacent to that. It also has a utility right-of-way through it. The real estate division has performed some magical feats over the years with small isolated parcels like this that ended up filling out extremely large indentures over time. There will be a need for this property. I can guarantee it at some point in the future. And if we didn't have these types of tracts available out there, it'd be very difficult to maybe at some point, join the two pieces of 187, the primary pieces of 187 together. And that may just be the piece that gets us there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary, call the vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. That's carried.
That motion carries.
The next item is also an acquisition, as appears on page 21 of your agenda. It's contract number L3716, State Game Land number 302 in Greene County. Consol Pennsylvania Coal Company LLC, CNX Thermal Holdings LLC, CNX Land LLC, CNX Gas Company LLC, and Cone Gathering LLC, collectively referred to as Consol parties, are offering 1,536 more or less acres of land in Rich Hill Township, Greene County, adjoining and near State Game Land number 302. The land is being presented at no cost to the Commission through the United States Fish and Wildlife Service as mitigation requirements for impacts to wildlife resources, specifically impacts to Indiana bats, a federal and state listed endangered species, and northern long-eared bats, a federal threatened species, for approved permit activities associated with coal, oil, and natural gas development projects. The land is to be managed in perpetuity in accordance with an Indiana bat management plan approved by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Consol parties reserve certain rights in and to the surface of the properties. In addition to the transfer of the properties, Consol parties shall make a one-time payment to the Commission in the amount of $580,000 for the purpose of creating a stewardship fund for the perpetual management of the properties. The Consol parties shall remove all homes, sheds, garages, barns, outbuildings, or other structures located on the properties, except those structures required to support permitted activities. 1,236 more or less acres of the 1,536 more or less acres adjoin State Game Land number 302, and those are bisected by a coal conveyor belt line running north to south, shown on Exhibit Red 3 on page 22 of your agenda. The area outside of the belt line and operating area is forested with mixed hardwoods interspersed with hay fields and reverting old fields. The properties contain known Indiana bat roosting and foraging areas. Owen Run flows through the northern parcels and Crabtree Creek flows through the southern tracts. Multiple access points are available from Walker Hill Road, Ackley Creek Road, Iams Hill Road, Smoky Row Lane, Raymer Road, Nebo Ridge Road, Durbin Road, and Braddock Run Road. The remaining 300 more or less acres are located southeast of State Game Land Number 302 in 4 tracts, as shown on Exhibit Red 4 on page 23 of your agenda. The majority of that acreage is forested with mixed hardwoods separated by approximately 65 acres of grass hay fields planted on the gently sloping hillsides and along the roadways. The properties lie within and near the bat occupation area established by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Access is from Route 21, Crow Road, and Poland Run Road.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from the commissioner?
Yeah, Pete, if I could. So, in principle, what this land is being given to us for is so that we can care for the habitat for the Indiana bat. Is that what I get?
That is correct.
So are there hunting opportunities around this area? Can you go into that just a little bit?
Absolutely. While a good section of the actual beltline is fenced, there is adequate and ample hunting opportunity available on either side of that. There was really good hardwoods on the property, quite an amount of them. So I'm sure there was small game opportunities as well. Grasslands along the belt line and that whole corridor through there. It really is an extremely nice property, and glad to see it finally made it to the agenda here.
So the $500,000 plus or minus that we're getting, is that going to be adequate to take care of the needs of that area? It's not going to be a money pit, is what I'm getting at for us.
Correct, and I think that's the unique thing about this acquisition. There was times where if we were offered land, and there were restrictions on it, we would take the land with the restrictions. We actually have a mechanism to pay for management activities, to pay for things like payment in lieu of taxes on this specific property. So that $580,000, I think, is going to get us a long way. Maybe it may not take us, for the next 1,000 years, but I think it's going to take us for at least the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Pete, as I look at this map, that belt line's pretty long, and it's, I guess, equal parts of the property on kind of the east and west side of that. You said that's fenced, so is there any access through and under the belt line in places for hunters or not?
There are some places that the belt line is extremely elevated,
Okay.
and there's roads and such that go underneath the belt line. So although it appears entirely bisected here, it is not that way on the ground.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, call the vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion carries.
The next item appears on page 25 of your agenda, which is contract number L3717, Northeast Region Office, Luzerne County. Robin Patrice Hanson Saxton, a.k.a. Robin P. Albrecht, is offering a permanent easement 20 feet wide traversing the length of her property located at 100 Country Club Lane, Dallas Township, Luzerne County, from Country Club Road to property owned by the Commission for a right-of-way for the construction, improvement, operation, and maintenance of a water line to service the Commission's Northeast Regional Office, as shown on Exhibit Red 5 on page 26 of your agenda. The 0.078 more or less acres right-of-way is being conveyed to the Commission for a lump sum payment of $5,200. The Commission is in the process of constructing a new Northeast Region office building on the parcel of land where the existing office building is located. The existing office is currently serviced by well water and public sewer, and acquiring this easement will allow the Commission the opportunity to use public water at the new Northeast Region office building location.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Any discussion or comment? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no.
The next item concerns an exchange, contract number L3718, State Game Land number 179 in Greene County. CNX Land LLC and Consol Mining Company LLC, Consol, are offering 177.3 more or less acres of land in Jackson Township, Greene County, adjacent to State Game Land Number 179, as the sixth and final tract of land being offered to the Commission in exchange for a license for right-of-way for a 16-inch water line on State Game Land Number 245 in East Findlay and South Franklin Townships, Washington County, and a license for right-of-way for 69 kV overhead electric transmission lines on State Game Land Number 179 in Jackson and Gilmore Townships, Greene County, as shown on Exhibit Red 6 on page 28 of your agenda. This right-of-way land exchange and the previous 5 tracts of land totaling 221.1 more or less acres were approved by the Commission under contract number L3664 at its January 28, 2014 meeting. This final tract of land increases the total acreage to be conveyed to the Commission to a total of 398.4 more or less acres. This final 177.3 more or less acres offered by CNX and Consol will serve to expand the acreage of State Game Land Number 179 in an area where mining activities have limited hunter access in recent years. The majority of the tract is hardwood forest with pole stage and some larger marketable timber, but also includes over 30 acres of shrub lands and reverting old fields. A 2-acre impoundment has been constructed on the unnamed tributary to Tom's Run that splits the tract north and south, and over 5 acres of emergent wetlands are present along the floodplain just upstream of the impoundment. Access is available via Jones Road, T428, which bisects the southern third of this tract.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. It carries.
The next item, appearing on page 29 of your agenda, is contract number L3719, State Game Land Number 223 in Greene County. Dana Mining Company of Pennsylvania LLC, Dana, is offering a total of 58.5 more or less acres of land comprised of 2 tracts located in Dunkard Township, Greene County, adjacent to State Game Land Number 223, as shown on Exhibit Red 7 on page 30 of your agenda, in exchange for a license for right-of-way, a license, to Dana granting the privilege of constructing, operating, maintaining, and removing a water line across State Game Land Number 223 in Dunkard Township, Greene County. Dana has agreed to cause to convey this land to the Commission in addition to paying the Commission's standard habitat, surface, and timber damages, as well as paying the Commission's standard annual license fee, so long as the license remains active. The license authorizes approximately 1,725 feet of 11-inch diameter water line and associated communications line, both to be covered with a minimum of 3 feet of soil in a 10-foot wide right-of-way as shown on Exhibit Red 7, also shown on page 30. Dana is also authorized to use and reclaim approximately 1.19 acres of temporary workspace outside of the right-of-way for initial construction and reclamation. The contiguous tracts offered by Dana are located adjacent to State Game Land Number 223 and will serve to improve public access by extending the game land south to Bald Hill Church Road, SR 2021, and Dunkard Creek. The habitat is mostly hardwood forest with pole stage and some larger marketable timber. There is a dense shrub understory throughout and approximately 1 acre of reverting old field. Titus Run crosses the northern tract, and a smaller unnamed tributary to Dunkard Creek flows from the northern tract and discharges into Dunkard Creek within the southern tract. A portion of the northern tract is bisected by an overhead electric distribution line right-of-way and will also be crossed by the water line.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have one.
Jim?
Looking at this exhibit, Red 7, Pete, looks like a lot of this area has been previously mined. Have we checked, are there any issues with the mining itself, or how far along it's been reclaimed? Any issues there?
Correct. There is a large portion of that was mined out fairly recently, from what I understand. I'll have to defer to Dennis if he knows an exact timeline on when that was reclaimed. Dennis, you aware of that? Yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the timeline on that.
But we're not dealing with any kind of acid runoff or any high walls or any issues with these wells?
That is correct. None that were identified by the region when they went out there and did their own exam.
Okay.
I do have a question. We see these come up every so often. We have now a communications line and a water line running across the game lands. Is that coming from a well on the game lands?
Negative, not in this case. But the unique thing about this is, although we're getting some acreage out of this, we're also going to have our standard right-of-way licensing fees, et cetera, into the future. So if there is any movement of liquids or anything like that, I don't believe there are any. Let me just read here real quick.
It's just water.
It's just a water
Yeah,
line
trying
is
to
what
figure
I'm
out where
reading.
it's going.
I
where
know,
it's
it doesn't
coming
look
from.
like it
'Cause
starts or ends anywhere.
It
They
starts
gave
at
us
the
some
mining
land and it doesn't
operation.
cross that land, so I'm just,
Right, it starts at the mining operation, and the intent is not to discharge that material directly into the creek.
okay.
That, they've got permits in place to move that directly over to the river. So in an attempt to, abate the discharge into the actual small tributary.
Okay. I guess that answers the question. Where was it going? Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll, call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That carries.
And the next item on page 31 of your agenda concerns oil, gas, and minerals and a non-surface use oil and gas cooperative agreement on tract 189A-17, State Game Land number 189 in Beaver County. Range Resources Appalachia LLC, or Range, has requested the commission offer its oil and gas ownership under a 223.2 acre portion of State Game Land number 198 for oil and gas development. The proposed tract is located in Hanover and Independence Townships, Beaver County, as shown on Exhibit OGM-1 on page 32 of your agenda. Range has the only privately owned oil-gas leasehold positions in and around the entirety of State Game Land number 189. Range has also initiated unconventional well drilling and development programs in the vicinity of the proposed tract and has the ability to unitize the Commission's oil and gas reserve by horizontal drilling with no surface disturbance to the proposed State Game Land tract. The OGM staff has negotiated the terms of the proposed agreement with Range to prudently develop the Commission's oil and gas reserves while simultaneously safeguarding the wildlife resources and recreational uses of State Game Land number 189. The terms of the agreement are a 5-year paid-up, non-surface use oil and gas agreement, a $3,500 per acre bonus payment, and 20% royalty for all oil, gas, and other liquids or condensates produced and sold from the proposed tracts which are owned by the Commission. The bonus payment of $781,200 may be deposited into the game fund or into an interest-bearing escrow account for the future purchase of wildlife habitats, lands, or other uses incidental to hunting, fur taking, and wildlife resource management. Future rentals and royalties owned the Commission shall be directly deposited into the game fund. Oil and gas development will be regulated by the Commonwealth's oil and gas regulations and the Commission's standard non-surface use oil and gas cooperative agreement.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? That carries.
Is there any other old business to come before the commission before we move forward?
Mr. President? I believe back in, and I'm trying to remember exactly, in March, I think it was, there was a request by Fisher Mining to move into a new area of mining, and we had asked our staff to look into whether prior commitments had been met before we were to vote on that. And I think that was to come up at today's meeting. So I'd like staff and whoever's the appropriate person to report back to us as to what progress has been made. Would that be you, Pete, or?
I believe I'm going to have to defer to legal counsel to answer this question.
Okay.
Since I believe it was March, and since March, we have diligently been working with Fisher Mining. We've talked to them as recently as today. There has been some progress that has been made on several issues, in fact, and in fact, I believe I will be talking with them next week to discuss some of those. So I guess the answer is there has been progress. If you were to ask me if everything was settled up as of today, I would have to say no. But yes, we've had much progress, and recently.
With that being said, we did table the request. I would ask for a motion to table the request for another 6 months. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I could, maybe amend that motion to table until our January meeting.
Okay.
As opposed to 6 months, so that if any progress is made, we can readdress it at that point.
Okay. All right. There's a motion, there's a motion to amend the motion from 6 months to January. Do I have a second on Tim's motion?
Second.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, Mr. Secretary, would you call the vote on the amendment first, please?
Okay. So the amendment now is that we would table this until our January commission meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That portion carried.
All right, we'll call a motion on the original, call a vote on the original motion, amended motion.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so now we'll vote on the amended motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carried.
As we all know, today, I think this meeting is the last meeting for two of our commissioners, Robert Schlemmer and Dave Putnam. And I know that we have a couple of items for each of you. I'll ask that Bob come down front first, and we'll have a little opportunity to be with you for a second. Bob, I just want to thank you for the many years, the last 8 years of hard work as a commissioner. I know it's very difficult at times. I know we've gone through some ups and downs in the commission over the last 8 years, but you've become a very good friend, and you've done a lot of work for the agency, and I just want to congratulate you on that.
Groundhog's from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania.
A little tough today. First of all, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with the fine people of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I have to read a few things here just to keep track of what I was thinking about. If I may put my cheaters on. Everything starts with a story. It all started with a bear 45 years ago. My family was at our bear camp up in Cameron County. was with my dad and Jim Scott, who later became a deputy. They were ahead of me at daybreak on the mountain. A 175-pound bear was taken, and we were back at camp by 8 o'clock in the morning. The bear needed to be checked in those days by a game warden. So when we got home, we called an old-fashioned game warden, and you may remember his name. He's still around. His name was Sam Bigfoot Lockerman. And I'm sure there's a few here yet that know Sam. What is working? I asked him while he was there checking the bear, I asked him what his work entailed. He looked at me and said, "I'll pick you up Friday night at 8 o'clock, dress warm." Well, it's a good thing I dressed warm. He took me out and he got the highest ground. There was snow flying. He wound the windows down, wouldn't turn the heater on. He says, "You can't hear shots with the windows up." And I froze, and he wrapped himself in an Indian blanket all night. I got home at daybreak, frozen, tired, and hooked. Okay? It's the best way I can put it. Deputy training took place out of the Southwest office in Ligonier. The next 37 years were some of the most interesting and exciting times of my life. Also during that time, I had an opportunity to serve as chairman of the Governor Rendell's Advisory Council for Hunting, Fishing, and Conservation, and a special thanks to Rob Miller. Thanks, Rob, for that opportunity. I appreciated that. We've come a long way, and I mean we, working together and now communicating with all parties who manage the wildlife resources in the Commonwealth. And I'd like to say a special thanks at this time to Senator Jim Brewster, Senator Don White, and Senator Rich Alloway, who worked with me. And I appreciated that very, very much. And if you get an opportunity to see them before I do, please thank them for me. Josh, are you listening? Where'd he go? Okay, thank you. I'm going to read a little bit here about names. I'd like to mention a few of the folks that came along with me. Sam Lockerman, who started it all the Southwest deputies that I had the privilege to work with, including the excellent Southwest staff, and the following WCOs from the beginning. Sam Lockerman first, Barry K. Moore, Don Smith, Gary Toward, and finally Seth Masoris from the office, Brian Singer, retired Pat Anderson, and current regional manager, and congratulations to Tom Faison. Retired ED, Matt Ho, I appreciate everything. Current deputy directors, Rich Palmer, Tom Grayhall, Dot Durr, Steve Smith, Pete Sussenbach, Deanna Vance, Randy Shope, Robert Boyd, Travis Lowe, and if I miss somebody here, don't throw me under the bus, please. Wayne LaRoche, Bob D'Angelo, who thinks he's my brother or whatever. I've heard that ever since I got here. And a couple of special ladies, Denise and Lydia, who held things together for me. Okay, kept the paperwork going. I really appreciated everything, really. Our legal beagle, Brad Crowman, there you go. Thank you. He taught me about crows and told me they were the smartest animals out there, birds. Thank you, sir. Last but not least to mention, Hal Korber, who I harassed for 8 years. Oh, there he is. Hi. I'm going to steal that yet. My best wishes go out to our new ED, Brian Burhans, who I had the opportunity to meet and work with. To the commissioners, past and present, that I've had the privilege to work with, I thank you. We together made changes and some good things happened together. It wasn't all about me at all, zero. and the wheel goes around, and I hear we're going to get game wardens back again. That'd just be the most wonderful thing. And finally, thanks to my family, who have always supported me, and they all participate in the outdoors. Just recently had a granddaughter graduate from Penn State in wildlife, and she hunts, and she took 3 bears with a bow. Thank you all for the opportunity to serve. And finally, thank you, Janet.
With that, I'd like to bring Dave Putnam down with his book. I'm sure he's got one written. Dave has been an asset that will be very hard to replace, and I hope that those in the power understand that Dave served a need on this commission over the last 8 years, and for the last 5 years, although we always didn't agree, we certainly found common ground and made the commission much better than it was years ago. So I ask that whoever replaces you at least tries to come close. Dave.
Snowshoe bear. Because we didn't have a porcupine.
I have a few prepared remarks. We'll probably take an intermission after about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So if you have to go out and go to the bathroom or get something to eat, go ahead and just take off. First, I think I would just ditto everything that Bob said. I'm not going to name everybody, but everybody that Bob said and more was very important to me. You know, during my time here, it's just so exciting to be part of a winning team, and that's the Pennsylvania Game Commission. You know, you can get picked for a lot of teams, and I've worked with a lot of state agencies. I look at all the other agencies, and what I'll always say is they didn't get first pick. The Game Commission did. You know, there was a time when there was 5,000 people applied for our training class, and now there might still be 5,000 if they would let us take that many. I think to put things in perspective, Bob was only associated with the commission for 45 years. That puts him in the junior category because I've got 24 more years on top of him. I've been associated with the Game Commission longer than anybody here because I was born when my father was in the training school. I was the fly on the wall for 30 years listening to all those conversations, and all the people that Bob would mention, like Sam Lockerman. Well, many of the legendary guys sat in our kitchen and they were plotting and planning and coming up with their next big thing. I knew all the executive directors from Glenn Bowers on. I'm not, but they would know me. I was in every executive director's office. We sat down and had a beer together with most of them. So I've got a long association with the Game Commission. And when I finally got selected as a commissioner, it's like we have a 2-day orientation. And I said, no, you know, I think I pretty much know what's going on. Let me just get mine in 1 day. And I would tell you, I learned a huge amount. I'll tell you about my history, and I worked for the Game Commission. I have a degree in wildlife management. I knew every one of the biologists for many years, but boy, I still learned a lot. And I learned about all the good things that we do. We talk about our land management deals with my friend Dennis back there. I mean, every one of those deals is huge. We just approved one 7/100ths of an acre. You probably had as much time in on that 7/100ths as you do on some of the really big ones. But in the last 8 years, we've approved a huge amount of land deals, and every one of them is special. I mean, if you look at other state agencies, when we were at Middle Creek yesterday, and that was purchased with Project 70 money. Well, other agencies got Project 70 money. Nobody got the land that the Game Commission did with the dollar value of the land that the Game Commission did. Because other agencies will sit back and, well, what the heck, it's government money, I don't care, we'll just take it. But our guys, every one of them is out there working to get the most they can for the sportsman and the resource. Let's see here. the biggest thing, again, is everybody in this agency is passionate about what they do. It is, if you're going to work with it, if you're going to get picked for a team, you're sitting there, who wants to be picked with a losing team? The Game Commission is winners from top to bottom. I know the WCOs are maybe what the public sees and thinks that the WCOs are all there is to the agency, but from top to bottom, this agency is top notch. And the passion and dedication is just unmatched in any other agency. And I think that pretty well covers what I got to say. People say, are you going to miss this? You know, I've been associated with the Game Commission my entire life, and I don't anticipate not being associated with the commission. I won't be sitting up here and I won't be voting, but in my past I've been involved in getting a fair amount of money for the Game Commission through various grants and things. I'm going to continue doing that. So I'm hoping to see most of you all again sometime, and it's been a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'll be back after a brief intermission.
Is there any other new business to come before the commission? Being none, the next working group meeting date will be December 18th. The next commission meeting dates are January 28th. Is that the 3-day meeting? Yeah, so that was the 28th, January 28th, 29th, and 30th. There is no executive session scheduled. There will be a press meeting immediately following the conclusion. And at this point, unless anyone else has anything to say, have I got anything? Nothing? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Schlemmer. Mr. Secretary?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No?
Thank you all.
Meeting's adjourned. We ever made a motion to adjourn?
That was the motion. I know, that's the first time we've ever done that. We just adjourned. You're always supposed to make a motion. Yeah, you did it right this time. Helen